We are here on July 19th, 2019, from Cook Baxter Immigration in Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Hiba Ghalib. I'm an immigration lawyer and a partner here at Cook Baxter Immigration. We're here to talk about asylum, what asylum is, what it isn't, and what the current administration is trying to do to curb applicants for asylum and refugees, as well as make it more difficult for them to for people to enter to the U.S. I will be following along on my phone, and you are welcome. Let me turn the volume down. You're welcome to ask any questions about this or any other topic within our immigration field. And of course, if we can't get to it live, I will definitely be answering your questions later. So feel free to chime in if you have any comments or questions. So the reason for this particular topic is because we've talked about asylum before in the past, of course, but this week is different because this week was probably one of the harshest in U.S. in recent history. Our administration took a very tough stance against the law, or at least as it stands today, trying to limit the ability of applicants for asylum. And it's been a very significant, it will, if taken effect, will have a significant impact on applicants. And now the announcement came on Monday, and essentially the announcement was to enforce a rule that would deny applicants for asylum that entered the U.S. through the U.S.-Mexican border. And normally that would be a legitimate applicant for asylum could be an applicant from the U.S. border. However, the limitation would prevent them from applying had they traveled through another country and not applied for asylum in that third country. So in other words, for example, this is where it would probably be most likely to take effect. An applicant or an asylee traveling from Central America through Mexico, through the U.S.-Mexico border, attempting to claim asylum in the U.S. would be prevented from doing so had they not attempted to apply for asylum from any country on their way or en route to the U.S. So that would obviously serve to prevent many people from being eligible for asylum, and I think that was the intent as well for the government, who's already right now very backlogged in adjudicating asylum claims for people worldwide that are applying from nations worldwide, but are also that are in the USCIS with applying affirmatively, but also in removal proceedings in court applying for asylum there. So there's definitely a backlog for asylum applicants, and this is a problem not just for our administration to try to overcome, but also for the applicants themselves, because in the meantime their lives are obviously in limbo. If they don't know whether this is going to work out for them, or whether they'd be able to actually continue to remain in the U.S. lawfully, if their asylum application is approved. In the meantime, they're fleeing persecution and they're concerned about having to go back and what other options they may have. So it's very difficult for the people in these situations. Just to recap, now that this program was announced, or this rule was announced on Monday. This isn't the way typically rules are made in when it comes to immigration law. Usually our laws are created by Congress, and this is a bypass of that system. There hasn't even been time for feedback for this rule, and there hasn't even been time for our own administration, the agents at the border and the agents adjudicating these cases to even be prepared or to be informed about the new rule, be able to actually apply it properly. Not to mention, of course, it doesn't really comply with our current immigration law as it relates to asylum. And so therefore, there are many immigrant advocates and groups that have denounced this new rule. And on Tuesday, there was a lawsuit filed in San Francisco at the U.S. District Court there to enjoin this law from taking effect. Like I said, this is most likely outside of the scope of asylum law. Not most likely it is, but most likely it should be. There should be an injunction. And I think part of I'm sure the administration actually knew that would probably happen, but a lot of the immigration rhetoric right now in our nation is a lot of it is just anti-immigrant, whether or not it's legal or not. A lot of it's just to create, I believe, a climate of anti-immigrant, kind of rhetoric. And so a lot of this isn't necessarily being said because it can be applied or should be applied, but because it's something that our administration is using to exploit political gain, gain favor from perhaps future voters in the upcoming election. I mean, there are lots of reasons for it, and there's a lot of people that are unhappy with the current administration's position on this and other topics, and therefore I think it's creating a big discussion. And we're here to talk about it and clarify a little bit about what our current law is. It's not a new law. And actually, asylum law has been around for decades. And the U.S. adopted this as a UN resolution. I want to say it was in the 50s, probably 1950, 1951. I can confirm exact dates in a moment. But it was 1951, yes. The U.S. Adopted the UN Convention of 1951 relating to the status of refugees, and they became a party officially in 1968. Congress later on adapted it within our own laws in 1980, and so these aren't new policies. And our current laws actually do allow for applicants for asylum, seeking asylum, and you can find it online at uscis.gov, where you can find the application for asylum posted there, and the instructions are very clear. One can apply for asylum from within the U.S. However, they enter the U.S., and people are attempting to enter to be able to file this request. The applicant for asylum needs to be a refugee and fall within the definition of a refugee, and that's according to our law. And the rule or the definition of a refugee is someone seeking persecution based on 5 protected grounds. It's not anybody. It's not somebody who is looking for a job or looking to seek better opportunities for their family, but it is meant for people that are fleeing persecution. Again, these are serious threats to them and their families, not just harassment or discrimination. And therefore, when we talk about people that are applying for asylum, we're saying that these people really do have a serious threat to their lives. Not to say that they are all going to be approved, but we need to not assume that there are people that are here that aren't actual asylees, especially if they are following the rules and applying for asylum and claiming, fear. Now, the 5 protected grounds are important to understand, because a lot of people ask me, when we're doing consultations, if they believe that they're in a situation where they don't feel comfortable going back home to their country. Let's say they're here on a visitor visa, or they happen to talk to me and do a consult over the phone from abroad. It's important to understand the limitations. It's not easy to become an asylee in the U.S. The persecution has to be directed towards you. It's not general country conditions. No matter how bad they are. I know a lot of people are like, well, my country, there's been a civil war for many years. There's no way. I mean, there's no stability. There's no central government that can control the situation. There's, if something were to happen, there's just violence everywhere, and I can't go to anybody for help. The government won't help me. There's lots of that. But the unfortunate, the concern is, I think, in these situations, is that general country conditions cannot. The U.S. isn't able to accommodate an entire country that is obviously the population of which, if it's unstable for everybody. And so that's the idea. I believe it has to be understood in that way. But at the same time, if there is a particular reason why somebody is being targeted, then U.S. has our, per its values, enjoined in this UN refugee protocol to allow for security and safety for people fleeing persecution. It is a moral and ethical value that we continue to uphold in allowing people that are being threatened for their lives to be here in peace and security. And so this is what the asylum rule allows or permits people to do. And the 5 protected grounds, just so you know, are people that are fleeing persecution targeted at them based on their race, their nationality, their social group. This is a particular social group is a pretty nebulous, or it could mean many things to different people. So for example, within this category, homosexuality would fall within this, and we can talk a lot about that more if you need, but that's also another basis. Religion is another basis, and political opinion is another basis. So if you are being persecuted because you oppose the government, for example, this is a basis for you to seek asylum. If you fear, that you can be subject to harm because of an opinion like that, then this is definitely a basis for asylum. Again, like I said, country conditions that are just general unrest in your country, or economic maybe conditions where it's very high unemployment, things like that, those are not a credible or a reason for one to seek asylum. And I think Americans in general don't realize that. They feel like everybody, it's a free-for-all, that our borders are open and people just because they say that they want to come can come, but that's not how it works. And it's not how it worked before. It's not working right now because of the attempts by the administration to significantly limit applicants for asylum. So it's important to realize that we, in fact, not only need to apply our laws as they are and enforce them in the way they actually are meant to be enforced, in an efficient and humane way, but I believe it's also very important for us to consider reforming our current laws, because they clearly have been, they're very outdated. I think everybody can agree on a need for immigration reform given the current climate. Secondly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the raids. I know last week we were concerned about U.S. ICE officers coming to people's homes. We were on the ground talking to people who were legitimately concerned about their families being torn apart. This is a concern that remains for the most part, but the raids, to the extent that they were announced, were not, at least as far as everybody that we've talked to can tell, there hasn't been a massive raid on the community as it was announced it would be. So that doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to be educated about our rights in terms of, because all people have rights in the U.S. no matter what their immigration status is. So we can do a quick reminder of our rights, but also it's important to understand that if you're concerned about ICE raids, then maybe there's something we can do proactively to pursue immigration process in your case. So I would definitely pursue a consultation at the very least with an immigration attorney who may be able to assist you with reviewing your case to see if it's something that we can get started to avoid your sense of vulnerability all the time, because this is really difficult. Sometimes there are ways we can help people. Not always, but sometimes there are. Unfortunately, like I said, our laws are currently limited in our ability to help people, and turn becomes a little limited. But it's important and a responsibility, I think, upon us all to try to do what we can to fix our situation if possible, and to make it better for us and our families. So some of the things that we recommend or advise, and the rights are constitutional rights. They're fundamental to our Constitution and our U.S. Identity, really. The right to remain silent. You don't have to volunteer information about yourself. You don't have to answer any questions. You don't have to incriminate yourself. You can just say that I choose to remain silent. You can refer to an attorney if you're being questioned by law enforcement, and then an attorney can assist on your behalf. Secondly, you have a right to not allow people into your home unless they have a judicial warrant. So this is a warrant signed by a judge that allows people to come into your home. Otherwise, you don't have to let people into your home. You can keep your doors locked. You don't have to even answer the door at all. Once you voluntarily let people into your home, if they're ICE agents, for example, then you're giving them permission to enter. And that's the only reason they're able to come in. So this is another important piece of information to keep in mind. Don't open your door. If you're being encountered by ICE, you have the right to remain silent. And I think the biggest thing that can help you, and in the future potentially our ability to help you as immigration lawyers, you also have a right, or you also should be thinking about preparing, I'd call it like a care package. Maybe preparing your family, talking to them about your status, talking to them about how, what would happen if somebody picked you up? What can you do? Where are your documents located? Is there, give a little bit of a background to them, and maybe if you're not consulting with an immigration lawyer, at least your family will have the knowledge about your background enough to do it on your behalf if something happens to you and you get detained, for example. So these are important things to keep in mind. I think it will definitely prevent any issues going forward if anything were to happen, but hopefully, with when it comes to ICE, they're just doing their job. They're limited resources, limited agents. There's no way that, on the scale that it was announced, that they can go into the community and basically pull everybody out of their homes and deport them. However, I think it's important also to realize that this is actually meant to create fear in the community, in a vulnerable community, and hopefully with the support of people around them, that will remind them that they have rights and that we have a way to perhaps sometimes allow them to stay here with their families. There is sometimes a way for them. So we need to work together in figuring out what that can be. At the very least, we need to communicate with our representatives in Congress and let them know that this isn't the way to fix our system, that we're not fixing anything by pulling people out of their homes, mothers from their children, children from their mothers, separating families. These aren't criminals. They're not, for the most part, the only violation was that they overstayed a visa or something like that. And so we need to be able to figure out a way to make this a fair system, that if we're going to be enforcing it on such a massive scale like this, and we're not even going to have the ability, because we're limited in resources, to accommodate them in a humane way. Our detention facilities are overstuffed. And so we need to figure out a better way to treat people, in these situations. And I think that would be in everybody's best interest, not just the immigrant community. I didn't see any questions. Let's see. Did you? Again, like I said, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to post them here. This is just a general talk about asylum law and in the U.S. and our current administration's position. And if we have any other topics or suggested topics, we are happy to talk to you. And like I said, we're going to answer any questions that get posted afterwards. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great weekend. We look forward to coming back with you live next Friday, and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Mi inspiración principal es realmente muy simple, son mis clientes. Las personas que toman el sueño americano, toman lo poco que tienen cuando vienen y lo convierten en algo increíble. Todos los días mis clientes me inspiran. Cook Baxter Immigration es la práctica de la firma de inmigración más grande de Georgia, sirviendo a todos nuestros clientes en todos los Estados Unidos y en el mundo. Nuestros valores más importantes son simples: integridad, honestidad y valor. Es un honor ser reconocido por el servicio que brindamos a la comunidad a nivel local e internacional. Somos Cook Baxter Immigration, siempre al lado de inmigrante.